Today we are touring a fort in coastal Virginia built on land that saw the start of slavery in the English colonies that would become America. And the fort would also play a pivotal role in the beginning of the end of slavery in America as well. We will tell you all about it as we tour Fort Monroe in Hampton, Virginia, right across the bay from Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Your visit starts in the Visitor Center. Fort Monroe National Monument is a national parks site. It is free to visit. We will tour the fort in a moment, but first let's see what is on exhibit in the Visitor Center. There is an exhibit about the people who lived around here when the first English ships landed here in 1607 before making their way to Jamestown. The English named this land Point Comfort. The Kicquetan tribe of Native Americans lived a few miles west of this land. The exhibit talks about the kind of crops they planted and shows examples of American Indian pottery that was found at the Fort Monroe site. The English settlers actually set up about 40 miles or so down the James River, which they named Jamestown. They began to grow tobacco, which they were introduced to by the native tribes nearby. It quickly became in demand in Europe, and suddenly a large year-round workforce was needed to tend the tobacco. So in 1619, when a ship carrying 17 enslaved men and 15 enslaved women sailed up to Point Comfort and offered to trade the slaves for food, 246 years of slavery began in the United States. Fort Monroe was completed in 1834 and slaves were involved in its construction, but they had no way of knowing the role this fort they built would one day play in the freeing of America's slaves, but more on that in a bit. An African landing memorial is currently being built outside the fort along the seawall at Old Point Comfort to commemorate the first Africans in the English colonies and will recognize their courage and resilience in the face of the injustice of slavery. This is what the centerpiece sculpture will look like when it's done. It will be 25 feet long and 9 feet high. The plaza where the memorial sculpture will be on display has already been built. The sculpture will be another couple of years until it's completed and installed. You can learn more about this memorial at 1619landing.org.
So this model shows an aerial view of what Fort Monroe looks like. It's the largest stone fort ever built in the United States. The walls are about 35 feet tall and 10 feet thick. It's surrounded by an 8-foot deep moat, which we cross by footbridge. Inside the outer walls of the fort are casemates, which are vaulted masonry chambers that are built inside fort walls. The casemates were largely used as protected gun positions, ammunition storage, living quarters for troops, and on at least a couple of occasions, the casemates were used as jail cells. There are doors into the rooms that are built in these casemates on the interior of the fortress walls, and there are stairs that take you to the top of the walls. So we went for a walk up on top of the fort. Interestingly, there's a pet cemetery up there. Between 1936 and 1988, over 400 dogs, cats, birds, rabbits, and other beloved pets of military personnel and their families stationed at Fort Monroe are buried here. You can walk along the parapets and get good views of what lies both outside and inside the fort's walls. This fort remained an active Army post until 2011, when it was finally deactivated as it was deemed no longer necessary. 2 months later, it was named a national monument. Here is the Flagstaff Bastion, one of 7 bastions at Fort Monroe, and the official location where the flag was flown on base. By the Flagstaff is a lookout point where you can get a great view of the Chesapeake Bay. The map up there even shows you the general location. That was a Civil War naval battle, which was the first fight between 2 ironclad warships ever. More on that later. Inside the fort today, you can visit a free museum called the Casemate Museum. Even though it is free, you do have to get a timed ticket at the visitor center before you can enter the museum. There are a number of museum exhibits in the casemates within the fort walls. There's one about the construction of the fort and how it was made strong enough to still be standing almost 200 years later. There was an exhibit about the hotels built around the fort. One of them, the Chamberlain, is still standing today, though it has been converted into a luxury retirement community. There are exhibits featuring items that have been found during excavation projects here at Fort Monroe. And there's exhibits about the fort's military history and the weapons and tactics that were used here over the years. Throughout the Civil War, the Union troops from the North retained control of Fort Monroe. General Benjamin Butler was in command of the fort during the Civil War, when 3 enslaved men had run away and showed up seeking protection. Shortly thereafter, a Confederate general showed up demanding the return of the slaves, under the United States fugitive slave law that required citizens and officials, even in free states, to assist in the capture and return of runaway slaves. The North's General Butler, though, reckoned the fugitive slave law of the United States was not enforceable in another country, which Virginia was now claiming to be. He also said that since the Confederates claimed these men were their property, and since the Confederates were actively using their slaves to carry out war against the Union, the Northern Army would be confiscating their property, the escaped enslaved men, as contraband of war. The men were given protection and paid a wage for any work they did while staying at the fort. Word got out, and thousands of enslaved people escaped and made their way to Fort Monroe during the Civil War. When there were too many to house in the fort, a contraband camp was established nearby the fort. Many of the so-called contrabands became Union soldiers. Earlier I mentioned the Battle of the Ironclads right off the coast of Fort Monroe. Here's what the 2 ironclad warships looked like. The fight was basically a draw, with neither side being able to pierce the other's iron armor. As the Civil War wound down, the President of the Confederate States, Jefferson Davis, was captured and held in a cell in this casemate for the first few months of his 2-year incarceration at Fort Monroe, where he was accused of treason and held on suspicion of being involved in the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. He was never actually tried for either crime, as there wasn't much evidence that he was involved in Lincoln's assassination, and our nation's leaders ended up deciding to work towards reconciliation of the North and South so we could once again be united, rather than making an attempt at retribution against the lower half of the country.
As a result of the role this fort played in the Civil War, Fort Monroe got the nickname Freedom's Fortress. But there is still more history to be found as we tour this fort. The Chapel of the Centurion is one of the oldest wooden churches on any U.S. Army base. It was built in 1858 and is still an active church today. It was named in honor of Cornelius, the Roman centurion that was converted to Christianity by the Apostle Peter in Acts chapter 10. The church is not open to the public for touring, but there is a display about the church as one of the exhibits in the Casemate Museum. You can also see the Algernon oak, a tree that has stood for over 500 years, dating back to before English settlers arrived in Virginia. At the top of this incline, up the interior of the fortress walls, stands a small park that used to be called Jefferson Davis Memorial Park, which opened in 1956. And was funded by the United Daughters of the Confederacy to honor the Confederate president. In 2019, the name of the park was removed from the archway as a result of conversations about whether a Confederate leader is the type of person who should be memorialized. Next, our tour brings us to quarters number 1. This building is currently being renovated to stabilize the exterior, so we didn't get a real clear look at it due to construction equipment, though it is expected to be open for public touring once the renovation is done. This is well known as the place Abraham Lincoln stayed for a week when he helped plan the Union's attacks on Norfolk. It was cool to walk up to this building thinking that President Lincoln walked along the same ground. Revolutionary War figure and Frenchman Marquis de Lafayette was also entertained in this building during his visit to Fort Monroe in 1824. There are some old buildings, including a hospital and some barracks, that are being converted into apartment buildings for the general public to rent. So if you ever wanted to live in a fort, your opportunity is coming once the conversions are complete. As we were leaving, a National Parks ranger stopped us and advised there was about to be a musket firing demonstration, and he invited us over to watch. The historical interpreters discussed their uniforms, which were recreations of what Union soldiers would have worn in the Civil War. They discussed their weapons, and then they proceeded with the firing demonstration.
Ready. Aim. Fire. Move. Firing by file to the right, then firing.
Nearby, we saw the first 15-inch Rodman gun. This cannon was about 16 feet long and could shoot a cannonball weighing over 300 pounds over 4 miles. The soldiers at the fort named it the Lincoln Gun in honor of the president. There's more to see outside the fort, including Old Point Comfort Lighthouse, which is not open for public touring because it's still an active lighthouse. There are also a number of historic buildings and signage with historic information to see in the area outside the fort. And when you are done exploring history, there's also a beach outside the fort right along the Chesapeake Bay. Click the links at the end of this video to check out some other historical points of interest. And be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so we can see you the next time we're traveling through history.